Thank you guys for letting me speak, and it's just beyond powerful to see our families together and our amazing kiddos. It's something else. So, if you knew Blue, you know what he loved, and he absolutely loved a good story. Stories were everything to him, especially the superhero ones where the hero overcomes impossible odds, and he embraced them with every fiber of his being. And you guys know this, you see it with your own kids, but the whole, just squealing with delight with every victory and bracing himself for every setback, and then the roaring laughter with the comic relief. But for Blue, it was always a few moments before the actual action happened, which was fun. He anticipated for sure. He also definitely had a sense of adventure, and that included embracing the time his sister first got his mini mic and decided to do a full concert straight into his cochlear implant. And he just laughed through it. I mean, he's a very good big brother, for sure. And loved all of the crazy moments. And the wilder and the more unconventional, the more he loved it, including just finding ways to sneak down into our garage on the ramp. And then half the time he'd topple over in his gait trainer when he did this, but then he'd stay quiet because he didn't want to get in trouble or not be allowed to do it again. And then when I'd find him, he'd just burst out laughing. He loved it, and it was great. Let's see, what else? Oh, and jumping into the pool on his dad's shoulders, and also his dad would pull him. This time you see on the gait trainer, that's like the PG version for here, but sometimes it was on his potty chair that his dad would pull him around on the lawnmower. We roll a little differently sometimes. So he embraced absolutely every adventure, but he wasn't just about adventure. He also cared really deeply for his friends, and especially his friends with Kernicterus. And so he advocated alongside me at a lot of PIC events, including this one was in DC at the Pediatric Academic Society. And he and Lexi, we had adjoining rooms, and they would, at about 5 a.m., they'd start talking through the walls, and it sounded like a couple of exotic birds, but they both knew exactly what they were saying to one another. They also, this one presentation, the presenter had pictures of jaundiced newborns, which of course my heart was in my throat. I look over at Blue, he's got tears streaming down his face. Any infant, he always cried. He cared so much about babies and worried for them at the risk of Kernicterus as well. But that didn't last long, because that girl back there started the presenter next had a slide of a nuchal cord, like an umbilical cord thing that was particularly gross, that he just parked there for 5 minutes. And Lexi could not contain it. She just started laughing, and it built and built and built, and she and Blue are laughing, and Susan and I are laughing. And we're at the very front of an auditorium with, I don't know, I'm horrible at estimating numbers, but 500 to 1,000 researchers who are all very serious and very focused. And you might think that they were just some kind of silly preteens in that moment. But if you zoomed in closer, you would see the prominent doctor who was sitting just a few seats beside us, but was sitting so that he had his back to us the entire time. He would not acknowledge our kids, their presence, let alone their condition, because he often testifies for hospitals in their defense in our cases. And Blue remembered that. You can never forget that. There was another time at the Child Neurology Society where we had, I'm not sure if I have pictures of it, but these are Blue with all his friends. But okay, here we go. So Kara was there too, and they were charming everyone who walked by with their awesome smiles. But there were some people who wouldn't really establish eye contact. And there was one doctor in particular who, the guy looked like our booth was the very last place on earth he wanted to be, but it looked like he was being pulled in by a tractor beam, which our kids did have that effect on people. But when he came over, he had a question that was not a question, it was one word, and it was Kernicterus. He could not believe, absolutely could not believe that our kids actually had Kernicterus. And it didn't matter that we were quickly trying to give bilirubin levels and irrefutable, MRI evidence information to him. And he was no, and backing away. He did not want to hear it. And, other people might have thought that way, but he was the one who was bold enough and rude enough to come up and say that. But Blue never forgot, and it influenced the rest of his life and his decisions. But in all of my work with PIC, I really feel that, like, do people really want to know how rare Kernicterus is? I think people are content to say it's super rare, but nobody wants to know. Nobody's tracking it. We also went to the CDC in 2013 and sat with them for hours in their official uniform and dress. And what they told us was essentially that they weren't going to track Kernicterus because no one was tracking it. I mean, if you boiled it down, that's what they were saying. They said, oh, we piloted a little program in the Atlanta area to see how many medical records had Kernicterus as like a diagnostic code. And I was like, okay, who in the room has ever seen that on their explanation of benefits? No, we always see like cerebral palsy, we see all the other things, but never Kernicterus. It's always hidden. And it often felt like we were those people on the spec saying, we are here, we are here, we are here. But the problem is that denial is woven into the fabric of the institutions we rely on. And they can't help but hide their own systemic failures. And it's a huge freaking systemic failure, and we know that. But there's no incentive to do anything but minimize it. And so that's where we get to Blue's, it's not his last battle because his battle continues, but as he got older, his battle grew much more intense. And but he never stopped clinging to those movies, those stories. There was even a moment, maybe even weeks before he passed, where his migraine was so intense he couldn't even open his eyes. And John was asking him, Blue, don't you want to watch something more calm? And Blue normally would kind of groan and be bothered with us for asking that. But instead he lit up and opened his eyes, and I was like, what is... John knew immediately what was happening. Blue, he said, Blue, did you think I said Kong? And Blue just squealed. He was so, he absolutely loved Kong versus Godzilla, all of that. And so it didn't matter that he had a migraine. He had his story and he clung to it. And he absolutely refused to let difficulty define him and his pain. So as he also didn't want those doctors to be able to forget his Kernicterus and the Kernicterus in this room, so he made this choice to donate his brain for Kernicterus research. That creates a whole set of obstacles of its own, which I had seen a little bit of in my leadership with PIC. We'd seen people who'd tried and not had success, where their gift was never received. And what is a gift that's never received? What's a check that's floating around in the mail that never gets to its destination? You can't buy anything with it, nothing happens with it. And so we had to ensure that it actually reaches its destination. We had to define the points, we have to create the partnerships, much like what you've seen with traumatic brain injuries from concussions and how they've had to blaze that trail. We also have been blazing that trail for the past 18 months for Blue with Blue's Gift Foundation, thank you. And so it's this new endeavor to link together these critical pieces to make sure that Blue's gift can be received and so that we all can benefit from it. There have never been studies in the human brain post-mortem on Kernicterus, and there is so much to gain here. There have been a couple of incidences where they look at infants who have passed away in a bilirubin crisis, but never someone who has lived with Kernicterus. And if you read anything about what has happened in the world since 2005, when they started to look at that for concussions in football, it has blown open the door. Like, we know so much more than we did just a few years ago. But in Dr. Shapiro's research, and he can tell you more about that, but the animal models, the life cycle is only days. They don't see what happens with Kernicterus over time. They're much smaller. Their brain weighs 600 times less than a human brain, and they have different biology and cellular structure. So we haven't even known what the target is. And we need to know the target to know how to actually provide targeted treatment, right? And like when Blue got his deep brain stimulator and he had cochlear implants, I remember being like, okay, who's tried this before? And they're like, no, there's no research. I was like, have you even tried it in a piece of fruit? Like, have you put cochlears in? Like, the interference between the two? It's so hard to feel like a guinea pig as a human being. And there needs to be that research to know what's really happening and going on. So this provides that opportunity. It also provides irrefutable proof that is well documented, that will be well documented, about the damage of Kernicterus and its incidence in Blue's life. And also, there's another child. They got further than most, and they made the same gift, but it has never been researched. And we actually are ensuring that his donation is also reaching Italy. Actually, should be next week that it reaches there. So they actually will have 2 to study from the get-go. So we'll identify the target. This also will help in developing treatments. And then there are much broader implications because of the focal nature of Kernicterus and the way it can help us understand potentially cellular structure in the brain. So in terms of how to partner, it's a highly personal choice. It's really tough to talk about this, but at the same time, my daughter checked the box at the DMV to be an organ donor. So it's important. You just never know. And it's important even if your answer is no, because then your family knows and your wishes are made clear, and it's less for them to struggle with whatever happens, whether it's 50 years from now or whenever. And it isn't limited to those with Kernicterus. They also need control subjects. So it's also siblings, parents, whoever. We all can register. There now is a process. There's a 24-hour emergency line. There's a pre-registration that you can go through so that if a crisis happens, you're ready and it can be as viable as possible for research. And there's also the partnership with Italy and the means of processing it, which is in Maryland with the NIH's Brain Bank. If you want more details on all of that stuff, you can look at our website. But essentially, it boils down to us caring. We're the ones who carry around the body of proof with us every day and actually doing something about it. So, and the financial part is huge as well. It will take $50,000 a year to run the research lab in Italy. We've already raised 20. They have the Nathaniel Blue Fellowship, which will be dedicated one researcher specifically for this research on Blue's gift, and then there will be others as well, and they have the facilities to do it. They've been doing decades of research on Kernicterus. So essentially, this gives us all the opportunity to say, whether just with our voices and sharing the word, fundraising, or making that personal choice, that we are here and that Kernicterus is happening. Thank you so much, and yeah, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Ruth. Thanks. And then